So just before I begin, if you were wondering if it's more difficult to say a Mass that is live streamed, the answer is yes. Because, I've been saying Mass for 33 years, but this is all a little bit different because you have to hit cues and all of these different things. You can see that lighting has changed and all of that. And just to top it off, Elliot, who does an amazing job just before Mass, came back to check a few little things, and then as he's walking out, he wishes me luck and says, break a leg. So it's a slightly different atmosphere than what I'm used to. But thank you. I will try to break a leg. Here we go. So this reading for the Good Shepherd is essential for us, very important for us, because it has to do, it sort of like in your own homes, it has to do with how you support yourself, how you eat, where you live. You know, do you have adequate housing and food and all of those kinds of things. And this is what Jesus is saying to us today. He's saying, I am the Good Shepherd. And what he's in essence is saying is that I will take care of every one of your needs. Now, very often we say, well, that's not true. We know that Jesus will only take care of our spiritual needs, and then we have to take care of, or somebody else take care of all of our other physical or material needs. That is a lie. That is a lie. And becomes obvious if you realize that God is the creator of heaven and earth and has provided every good thing. Yes, he asks us, invites us really to be a part of creation and cooperate. And so we work. And that's in Genesis, right? We work. And so we receive the bounty of God's creation. And even after the fall, we see that we're meant to work by the sweat of our brow. But even then, God provides every good thing. There is nothing that God will not provide us. And even, if we look at technologies and all of that, he has provided us with knowledge and understanding. And the more that we delve into his universe, his creation, the more we learn. And we should always have reverence for that. So in fact, he does provide for us. And then, of course, we see in Jesus, most beautifully that we have sort of that teaching come to fruition. That in Jesus we see the Creator present among us as well as becoming one of the creatures. We see Jesus as the sheep and Jesus also as the shepherd. And it is a marvel that God would come among us and do that for us. And in a sense, you probably are aware that typically shepherds are behind their sheep, right? And so Jesus sort of changes that model because he comes among us as God and man. He says, I walk ahead of you and you know my voice and you follow after, which is beautiful. And it has everything to do with how God respects our free will and encourages us to be a part of creation and all of that. So that's an important meditation for each and every one of us to have and to live that in our daily life, meaning to give thanks to God for every good thing that comes to us, every good thing. Of course, first and foremost, the best things that come from God feed our soul. And so often that's the area that we focus on. But do not forget that other area where God provides for every need. And if you live your life that way, in that humble submission and surrender to God, you will have enough for all your days. God will provide. But also, he's pointing out sort of you see the struggle with the Pharisees are not understanding what he's saying, and because they are the leaders of the people. Also in this reading, we have this dynamic where Jesus is talking about what a true shepherd is all about. Thieves and robbers are sort of climbing over the fence, over the wall, over whatever the enclosure is to keep the sheep safe. They're climbing over. They're coming in a different way, sort of devious, right? And Jesus is saying, no, 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 I am the gate. And so if we want to know God's wisdom, we go through Jesus. If we want to be provided for, going out to green pastures and coming back into safety, we go through Jesus. If we want to know what is truth and true teaching and what is the, sort of the truth of our faith, we go through Jesus. No other teaching will be acceptable. And the great scandal of our time, and for a while here, is that preachers are no longer preaching Jesus or the gospel of Jesus. They're taking the gospel of Jesus and they're twisting it or turning it to become something else, something that the people want to hear in their disobedience, right? But once again, he brings us back and says, no, 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 no. True teaching comes through him. And he is the one who has the good news of salvation for us. So if you have the image, these go back to primitive peoples, and I've seen some Native American settlements in the east here, and it's true there as well. They would create the fencing. You see it in Ireland and England, and I imagine, I've never been to the Holy Land, but someday I imagine the same thing is true, sort of all across the world. What people would make fencing from the materials they had at hand, like saplings, and so they would have sticks, like that, set them up, and then they would weave the saplings through, the ones that were greener and they could move, and they would weave it through, so many of them through, until they had a section of, some places called a wattle, other places called a hurdle, or they'd have a section of this fencing, right? And they could set up that fencing in different places so the sheep wouldn't always be in the same place. And so they would set up those sections of fencing, and then the shepherd would lie down across the opening. So he would gather the sheep in to protect them so that wolves or coyotes or other animals, we know how they work. Very often they sort of sneak up, So they would create this fencing, and then the shepherd would lie across the front. And Jesus has shown us that not only in his teaching, in the working of his great power in miracles, but also in his willingness to give his life, he is the good shepherd. Right? And then each and every priest who's called after him is asked to model his life on the life of Jesus and give his life for the sheep. And so that means that we have to give real food and real drink, who is Jesus. We have to give real teaching, which comes from Jesus. We have to sort of enclose people in the church, in the true and authentic church, meaning described by its teaching, right? And so we have to teach what the church teaches. We have to teach what Jesus teaches. In all those ways we protect, and then also we have to be willing to be like Jesus and be that gate as well, to offer our lives for the sheep. God willing, we will be able to do that. By God's grace, we're able to do all those things. But what I'd like to commend to you today is that you, what I ask in your own lives is that you take care to sort of provide the fencing in your own life. And I would suggest to you 5 things. So I am willing to guide and protect and lead and all of those things by the grace of God and by Jesus. I would never take a task on my own or presume all of the grace that is necessary, but by the calling of Jesus. But then I'm calling you as his sheep to do 5 things. And if you do these 5 things, you will always be protected. Now, I have to remember what those 5 things are. And I think at my age, or maybe just any time, that I could remember 3 things, but 5 things might be a challenge. So it shouldn't be that hard. So the first thing is that you must pray from your heart. Prayer, we know, is essential to our lives. It's our breath, right? It's our breath. And but you have to pray from your heart. You can't just, I know many times my prayer is, and I follow the model of you fake it until you make it kind of thing, right? So at times it just seems like words. At times I just have to be determined to stay in prayer no matter what, right? But we have to pray from our hearts, even if it's just that gritty, determined place. I'm going to offer this to you because even this prayer, no matter how weak or feeble or distracted, is better than nothing. It's better than no prayer. And so we're encouraged to pray from our heart. And the second thing is the Mass, the Eucharist. Stay close to the Mass and the Eucharist. Like those of you, if you're not allowed to come here, then you stay by live streaming, or you say the prayers, or you open up, your missal and you follow it along and you pray. And then you have the spiritual communion. You stay close to the Mass because the Mass is the lifeblood of the church. In the old days, and I think it's still true, that life was associated with blood. That's the Eucharist. The Eucharist for us is our lifeblood. Be faithful to it. And if you can't go to Mass, but you're allowed, I know some places are allowing, and soon in Vermont they'll allow people to just go into the church before the Blessed Sacrament. Go. Right? As soon and as often as you're able. The third thing is the Scriptures. Read the Scriptures. And, people love the Psalms, then read the Psalms. If you love the Gospels, read the Gospels. If you're called to read, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, read those. there may be some books that you can just skip over because you're not getting anything from them, or you're just too confused. Revelation, Leviticus, things like that. Okay. But read the Scriptures. Open them and let the Word of God, which is still alive, let that inform your life. And then as Catholics, we have the beautiful practice of reconciliation. Plan on going once a month. Fourth thing, go to reconciliation once a month to protect yourself. Even if you think you don't have large sins and all that, that's not really what reconciliation is necessarily all about. Certainly, it is a refuge for those who find themselves in the midst of serious sin for whatever reasons, right, or circumstances. It is a powerful and a beautiful refuge for you to receive the mercy and the forgiveness of God, and to live in that mercy and forgiveness is everything, right? The fourth thing is celebrate the sacrament. And I said, even if it's just little things, it continually opens your heart, your life to God so that He can come in. He feels like a family member in your home, in the home of yours. So He can come in anytime. He's welcome anytime to go wherever He wants and do whatever He wants. Right? That's a beautiful thing. We learn that and we show that by reconciliation by God here. Living in His mercy. And then finally, fasting. Now, fasting is one of those things that we often neglect. Now, you can fast from different things, and I recommend that as well. If you're having a fast from television or YouTube or, Netflix or whatever. I saw a little thing the other day. Somebody was saying, I finished Netflix. I thought that was cute. I hope you have not. But anyway, it might be fasting from a number of things, but fasting from food is also a powerful sign. Like some of us who take medications, do whatever, we can only fast for about, the thing that works for me is about 16 hours, to fast for 16 hours. And that's beautiful. And trust me, in those 16 hours, I always want to go and get something to eat. I just always want, and I have to stop and say, no, I'm offering that. Why? It's just physical sign of a spiritual reality, which means that I am trusting in God. That something is more important to me than even life-giving food. Right? What is more important to me is to make a sacrifice. Because Jesus made sacrifice for me. And by that regular fasting, weekly fasting, right, I am gathering a beautiful offering to be offered to the Lord along with His sacrifice. 5 things. Keep those 5 things and you will be protected. And God willing, you will have a shepherd who is like that gate, like Jesus Himself, ready to give His life for you.